Hi everyone, Rod Shelley here, and going to be putting together a little tutorial here. I'm going to keep it as short as I can on using the Liquefy filter. This is kind of a tutorial by request for my friend Jay Lewis over at WP Guru, and I had posted an image with Tempestt here holding curtains, the curtains parted, and he was kind of wondering how I did that, so I'm going to show you in this tutorial. We have lovely Tempestt here, who was rendered in DAZ Studio 4.11, and little shout out to my friend Wesley in Chicago. He goes by Desgar on Renderosity. This is one of his galactic divas. They work occasionally hand in hand with the T.N.A girls, and Tempestt is one of his lovely ladies. He describes her as having 1/4 of the offensive firepower of an Enterprise-class starship, so it's best to keep her happy. So let's get rolling. First thing we need to do, obviously I've got her hands up here. The thumbs are going to be kind of wrapping around the curtains, and I have created a little sketch. Kind of gives you an idea of how the curtains are going to look. So let's get started. We'll put a new layer up above this one, and I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, and I've got several nice lace patterns. I'm just going to keep the one I have selected because it looks pretty cool, as you can see there. And I'm going to go Control J, duplicate that layer. I'll shut the first one off, and I'm going to use our Move tool and drag this one over to the left, kind of like that. And then we'll take the other layer and drag it over to the right, kind of get them centered there, more or less where the sketch is centered, kind of like that. And we'll just start with the left one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hit Control T. I'm going to make the shrink the image down just a bit. If I can, there we go. And Control T, and what I want to do, I want to make this just a little bit larger. So going to make it a little bit larger. I'm using Photoshop CC version 2019, which to constrain the dimensions, to keep the aspect ratio the same on your selections, all you have to do is drag on any of the handles. If you're using earlier than that, you would hold down on the Shift key to constrain it. But anyway, I'm going to take our little gun sight, our little rotation point up here, and I am going to rotate the curtain just a bit. About there. Click away. And I'm going to move the curtain up just a little bit. Shut that one off, turn this one on, basically do the same thing, Control T, make it just a little bit larger, bring our rotation point up, rotate it, kind of get relatively close to where our sketch is. That's probably good. Stretch that out just a bit. Okay, and since we got this layer selected already, I'm just going to go ahead and use it for the Liquefy filter. So with that layer selected, we're going to go into Filter and Liquefy Filter. Okay, Now I'm going to make that just a little bit bigger. Move it around a little bit so you can kind of see what's going on. With the Liquefy filter, when you first start off, it's best to have a pretty good sized brush like this. If you have a really small brush, what happens is it pushes a really small area, and we don't want that to start with. We want a big area. We want this to look like the curtain is actually draping down from curtain rod up there at the ceiling. So we want this to be fairly large. And I'm using a Cintiq for this. The Liquefy filter is cool enough where you can use a mouse, and you'd press down on the left mouse button to move it around. With the Cintiq, it's pressure sensitive, so I can just press on the screen and start moving it around. So what we want to do is start moving it this way, and it's probably should still be a bit bigger. Now we make it a little bit smaller to get a little bit more dimension out of it. And you see it almost makes it react like real cloth. So I'm going to bring it down like that. Going to bring this down, kind of match the blue lines on the sketch to a certain degree. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Make it larger, and I'm using my bracket keys on the keyboard to change the size of the brush. You can see there we're already getting pretty darn close. Then we'll make it really small. We can kind of bring this up towards the thumb, bring that down a little bit, make it look like it's actually kind of bowing, like real cloth would. And you can also do stuff like, you know, real cloth would kind of scrunch, especially in this area where she's kind of holding it. So you can actually kind of scrunch it down like that and give it some cloth dimension. You can also come over here. This is the freeze mask tool, and make this a little bit smaller. Wherever you paint, that freezes whatever you're warping, whatever you're liquefying. So if we come here to the forward warp tool, I'll make that a little bit bigger, and watch right here at the edge. You see that squishes down, but where the red is, it protects it. So you can actually get some pretty nice effects that way. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And you can see we're pretty close to the line there. Like I said, it doesn't have to be exact. So I'm going to shut this layer off. I'm going to turn this layer on, select it. We're going to do the same thing. Going to go back into Filter, Liquefy. Let Photoshop think. Grab a big brush and just start liquefying. Now we're going to loop that. This thumb isn't looped over quite as much as the other. And you can see we got a little bit of where it curves in there, and a little bit here. And it doesn't have to be exactly on those lines. That's just kind of a, this is where it ought to be, sort of a thing. And we're going to kind of give this a little bit of a scrunch, just to give it that dimensionality that actual cloth would have. So when we go in, we can paint light and dark areas to show where it kind of ripples. But this Liquefy tool is great for stuff like this, because you can see, I'm going to come over here to an area that's not in the image, but you can see you can also almost make this look like real cloth, you know, react like real cloth. See how it scrunches together there, just like real cloth would. Then you can unscrunch it. Scrunch, it's a technical term if you didn't know. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And there we go. And let's go ahead and make the other curtain visible. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead right now and merge these two layers, because that's pretty much what we want. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the sketch, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Not quite that much. And what I'm going to do next is go ahead and lace normally doesn't just end like that. It's going to have some sort of a border. So I'm going to add another layer on top of my lace layer, and I'm going to go into my brushes, and I've got a brush here that hopefully I can get this to work. It was giving me some trouble last time. But you see what it does is it follows the path that I'm on. Okay, so if I change my color to black, you see what it does. So what I'm going to do, I might make it just one step smaller. And what I'm going to do is just kind of attempt to follow along the edge of the curtain. Like this, and just give it a little bit of a border like that. And it's not a big deal if I don't hit the exact edge. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the background a little bit so we can more easily see what I'm doing. Basically, that just gives it a little bit of a border, and I can show how I created this. It's not difficult to make these brushes. I'm getting a weird effect there. Turn that off. And again, it's not a big deal if you if you miss the edge a little bit. That can be easily fixed with the transform tool. So anyway, you get the idea. So we've got kind of a nice little lace border, and that's kind of nice if you know, say I wanted to give her some fancy hose tops or something. It works really well for stuff like that. Okay, I'm going to grab, no, I don't want that. I want the erase tool, and I'm going to go in here and just kind of make that little bobble go away. So anyway, you get the idea on that. I'm going to go ahead and merge the lace layers, and we'll go ahead and turn on our background, make that fit the screen. I've got a little group here with some shading effects so that that doesn't stand out quite so high or quite so much. And actually I think I might darken that just a little bit, kind of like that. So we've got our curtains now, and got lovely Tempestt holding the curtains apart, or she will be here in just a second when we fix her thumbs. So I'm going to throw a layer mask on that layer, and let's go ahead and bring this up pretty large. Okay, now actually I am going to take the layer mask off for right now, and I'm going to, you can see I don't have her thumb quite where I want it here, but that's not a problem. That's not a problem because we are Photoshop people and we do Photoshop stuff like this. Take our lasso and we'll Control T, and we right click and pick warp, and then we just warp this rascal a little bit. Let's Control H to hide the marching ants. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, let's click out of here, Control D to get rid of the marching ants. Okay, now let's put a layer mask on there. Grab a hard round brush. I'm just using a real small one, 19 pixels. And I'm going to reduce the opacity on the lace layer just a bit so we can see what the heck we're doing. And then I'm just going to, on the layer mask, make sure it's selected, and hopefully you can see enough of what I'm doing here. I know the inset is kind of small, but hopefully you can kind of get an idea what I'm doing. So we're going to paint black on the layer mask. Black conceals, white reveals. And basically what we're going to do is just paint away the lace around her thumb. Like so. Turn off the airbrush feature. Okay. Kind of like that. And we're going to come over to the other thumb, and it's not looped around quite as much. It's just a little bit, just enough to kind of hold the lace apart, the curtains apart. So we're just going to have a little bit of this thumb showing. I'll bring this in just a little bit. Kind of like that. Take our opacity on the lace layer back up to 100%. And there we have Tempestt holding the curtains apart. Now, to make it look like actual lace curtains, we need to give them some dimensionality. We've got kind of a dark background here, so the white doesn't really work all that well. Now I see a little bit of a bobble here. That's part of the problem with using the what I call the transform tool. I should have actually gone back in and used the Liquefy. Actually, that's what I think I'm going to do. So hang on. Okay, so I'm back in Liquefy, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the forward warp tool, and this is one of the points where you want to go ahead and make it small, because we're just interested in this area right here by our thumb. So let's just do that. While we're at it, let's fix this a little bit. Ooh, colorful. Let's fix this little bit of a bobble up here at the top. Mess with this a little. All about fine-tuning. And hit OK. All right. Now let's go ahead and put this layer mask on, and come in close, up close and personal with temp. And I'm going to reduce the opacity. Get my small round brush again, small hard-edged brush. And with the layer mask selected, paint black. And again, we just kind of want the tip of her thumb, because not the whole thumb is holding the curtain open here. Okay. There we go. Now we don't have that little split down here. You know, sometimes the transform tool is the way to go. Sometimes the warp or the Liquefy tool is the way to go. For smooth things like this, the Liquefy is usually your best bet. So anyway, we've got that taken care of, and I am going to go ahead and apply the layer mask, since we got what we wanted out of it. I'm going to lock the transparent pixels on the lace layer, because what I want to do is give this a little bit lighter color so that it actually stands out a little bit. Because if we go to our screen size, you kind of lose it in the dark here, and don't really want that. So I'm going to pick kind of a, I don't know, a mid-tone blue here, and grab a big old brush. And just paint the curtains in. Kind of like this. Okay, it looks good, but it looks kind of one-dimensional or two-dimensional. So I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to start with the lighter colors because they're easier to see. I'm going to grab a little less saturated, lighter blue. And I'm going to make this brush a little smaller. Let's see how this looks. Yeah, not bad. What we're going to do is give the curtains some ripple, little dimensionality. So we'll go for the bigger portions first. So we're just going to kind of make it a little wavy like that. Maybe a little bit like this. And maybe a little bit in here. And same thing over here on this side. A little bit of loopy there. Loopy. I'm a little loopy. Yeah, let's make it match the sweep of the curtains, shall we? Kind of like that. And a little bit here, a little bit down there. Maybe a little bit here on the edge. A little bit here on the edge. Just kind of separate it. And I'm going to go in close. Make this a little smaller. Now the light is kind of coming, if you look at the shadows on her chin and the hair, the light is kind of coming from our right, our front upper right. So we're going to give this part a little bit of light here. And there's where it's kind of scrunching together, you're going to have little ripples. Let's make that kind of go this way. Turn the airbrush part off. Kind of like so. And this one, a little bit of light up in here, a little bit of light area. And there's going to be some rippling here, kind of where her thumb is pressing against the curtain. Kind of here, maybe a little bit right in here. And make that a little smaller. Let's make our brush just a little bigger. And got transfer on, so we'll start off, fairly large and then let it go down a little smaller. Kind of like so. Maybe there's still a little bit of ripple here in the middle. A little bit of ripple happening. Yes, it's happening. We're happening. It's a happening day, folks. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Okay, and we'll happle a little bit over here too. Is it easier to happle if you're working on an apple? I should quit. All right. Now I did the brighter areas first because obviously they're easier to see than darker areas. But we have light, we must have dark. Kind of like the force. It has to be in balance. So let's pick out some since we're Star Warsing, let's pick out a little bit of dark here for our Padawans, and we're going to add a little bit of shadow, dark areas here. To give it that ripply curtain effect. Make our brush a little smaller. A little larger. Again, I'm using bracket keys on my keyboard. I could do that with the Cintiq, with the controls on the Cintiq, but I just find it faster to keep my fingers on the bracket keys on the keyboard. Okay, now we're going to go a little bit smaller because again we've got these areas here where her thumb is affecting it. Make that just a touch bigger. And if you get relatively close to the light areas when you paint the dark areas in, at least to me, it looks a little bit more realistic. I'll give it a little bit of contrast with her skin. And you can put some kind of dark ripples in other places too. Maybe down towards the bottom it's kind of starting to form its own ripple here. And darker down in this area. Down towards the bottom it's a little darker. Kind of like that. Maybe we want to come in just a little bit here and give it some dimensionality. A little bit more dark down here. Maybe a little bit more dark here. Like that. And I'm going to go ahead and pause this and do the other curtain, and I'll be right back. Okay, now I'm going to give the curtains just a little bit more dimension. I'm going to pick a lighter, still blue, a little less saturated, using a fairly small brush. I'm going to come through and just lightly stroke like this. Very, very lightly. You know, maybe there's a little bit of a ripple here that has a little bit of shine on it. Yeah, don't want some there. Maybe a little bit right down here. A little bit of shine here. Maybe a little bit more there. That's a larger ripple. It gives it that kind of shiny, satiny effect. Kind of a nice semi-romantic feel to the curtains. Little bit of it here. Gradually faded away there. Here we got kind of a split here, where it's kind of dark here and light here. So we'll give that a little touch of shininess, a little bit there, and a little bit here, maybe a little touch there. Yeah. A little bit of shine there. A little bit of shine there. Any place where it looks like there might possibly be a ripple. And I found with dark lace curtains like this, it's just a whole lot easier to start off with oops, I don't want that. It's just a little bit easier to start off with the light colors, because that gives you a kind of a reference on where the darks should be. It's easier to see the lights than the darks when you've got a dark background. Of course, it works the opposite way if you've got a light background and you're doing a light colored lace. So that's just something to keep in mind. So anyway, there we are. There's Tempestt holding the curtains back, and we have just one more little thing to do. I want to fix that one little bobble down here. Yeah, that. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and use the eraser. And I need to unlock the layer, otherwise it's just going to it's going to look weird. We don't want it to look weird. And of course we can always go in and get a brush, a really small brush, and select this lighter color, make the brush really tiny, and add some little loops like that. Turn that darn airbrush thing off. Yeah, because when you go small, yeah, it's not that noticeable. So, let's go ahead for the final little finishing touch. I'm going to go ahead and make the, actually I don't need to do it on this layer, I just need to do a Control J, set that to copy, then I'll go ahead and lock the transparent layers, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the top layer off. And what I'm going to do is grab a color somewhere in here close to the shaded color of her neck, or where her hair is shaded, where the shadow is from her neck or the shadow is from her hair. If I could ever learn how to talk, I'd do more of these. And I'm going to set this layer to multiply. And then I'm going to grab a great big old brush and I'm just going to paint. And I don't need to paint the whole thing, because obviously what I'm doing is painting a shadow. We're going to make a shadow for the lace that's going to appear on her. And like I said, I don't need to paint the whole thing because we're just concerned with where it covers temp. And we're going to go a little bit bigger. And what I want to do now is reduce the opacity where it kind of matches the shadow on her neck and the shadow from her hair. And that's looking pretty close. And again, we're going to, in just a second, I'm going to turn this layer back on. I'm going to use the move tool. I'm going to move that, basically it's a shadow layer. I'm going to move that shadow layer over a little bit. About like this. And I'm going to give it just a little bit of a blur, a little bit of a Gaussian blur. You know what? I need to turn off the lock layer. Then we'll give it a Gaussian blur. Looks like it's already about where I want it. Maybe a little bit less, because the lace is fairly close to her. That looks good. 1.2. I'd say we'll go with that. And then I am going to take the lasso, because about the only place I'm really concerned with it is on her arm. We're not going to see a whole lot of it down on her legs because this is too far away. The other part of it from this curtain is going to be kind of behind the curtain, so I'm not terribly concerned with that. The only place, like I said, where you're really going to see it is right here on her shoulder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this lasso tool, and I don't care if it makes a split like it did last time in the curtains. And I'm going to go Control T and right click for warp, and I am going to warp this just a bit. Let's go Control Hide and hide the marching ants. And you see you got a split there, but like I said, it doesn't matter here. And that looks good. And then what I'm going to do, while I'm on the shadow layer, I'm going to go down here and Control click on the Tempestt layer, on her layer. And what I'm going to do, I'm still selected on the layer 2 where the shadow is, on the shadow layer. I'm going to hit it with a layer mask. And of course what that's going to do is it's going to just basically mask the shadow off every place else but her. So you don't get the shadow on the bed and so on and so forth, places where you don't want it. Just puts it on her. So that's pretty much it. That's how I used the Liquefy tool to make the curtains look kind of sort of realistic. And of course you could spend a lot of time. I typically spend a couple hours, couple to several hours on a piece like this to get everything just perfect. But that's the general procedure. The Liquefy filter is awesome. It's your friend. I recommend just going in and playing with it. Just throw a lace layer or even a plaid sort of a layer. Just throw one layer on there and go in and play with the Liquefy filter and see what it'll do. You'll be amazed. It's an awesome tool. I love it. So there you go. If you enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up. If you like tutorials like this, I'm planning on creating several more. I'm going to be working on a multi-part, not tutorial so much as kind of a behind the scenes on my workflow. What I'm going to do is do an entire video, and it will be in several parts, on how I put together a page in the T.N.A. story, and I will go through each panel. Most pages are 5 panels. I will go through each panel, show you how that's created in Poser. I will go through the assembly procedure in Photoshop, so look forward to that. And if you enjoy this kind of tutorial, the more support I get on Patreon, and I've got a Redbubble store also. I'm opening up a Pixels store where you can get some cool merch, some T.N.A. merch, coffee mugs, t-shirts, pillowcases, whatever. The more support I get, the more stuff I can do. So, if the mood strikes you, hop on Patreon and help out a bro. But for now, this is Rod Shelley signing out, and look forward to more tutorials, and thank you for watching.